This is Beach Talk Radio.
Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. This is your captain speaking, Mean Gene. Mean Gene. The following will be a test of the ship's whistle, the sonar alarm, the cable alarm, and the atomic attack alarm.
And good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode number 5 of the Sunday Sanibel Show. My name is Ed Ryan. That is Kimberly Starkweather Ryan, my trusty sidekick, and we wish you all a good Sunday morning.
Yes, good morning. And we are coming to you from the home studio.
That's right, from the home studio. It's another lovely day out, and we appreciate everybody tuning in. We're going to talk to Dr. Scott Crater in just a minute. But first, what we need to do is we need to talk quickly about something that happened yesterday on the show. And a slight correction. Yesterday we had local attorney Mike Chinopoulos on, and one of the things that we were talking about was the town manager, Roger Hernstadt, and his contract that was approved hastily in 2019 by outgoing Mayor Tracy Gore and Dennis Boback, and that council. Those two are no longer there, but she knew she wasn't running again. He was running, but he did not win. And so what happened was they ramrodded it was supposed to be a review of his contract, and what they did was behind Anita's back. I don't know that for sure.
Why are you editorializing?
Oh, I think she was caught off guard by that. And they gave him a raise instead of a review, or with the review. And Joanne Champ was there. Bruce Butcher was not there because he had an excused absence. And yesterday on the show, Mike said that everybody voted yes for the raise. And that was, for those that listening on Sanibel, you probably have no idea what we're talking about. But he said that Anita voted for the raise. She didn't vote for the raise. And we went back to the videotape, the YouTube tape, and we pulled up this audio that we want to play for you. So listen closely. This is from the council meeting in 2019. It's a short clip to correct the record.
Motion to direct the mayor to execute the attached draft employment agreement with the town manager with the change of the base salary compensation shall be $170,887.50.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No. With
Motion
my apologies,
carries
Roger.
3-1 with Councilmember Saracita voting no and Councilmember Butcher excused absence.
Okay, and so we just wanted to make sure that we corrected what was incorrect yesterday. And I don't think Mike said it with any malice or anything like that. I just think he had bad information, and we wanted to make sure that we corrected it. So there we are. Anything you want to add to that before we move on?
No, and we let him know. We talked to him.
Yeah. All right. Now joining us from beautiful Sanibel, Florida is Dr. Scott Crater, and Dr. Crater is running for city council. There are 6 candidates running for 3 open seats. It's a wild and woolly race down there in Sanibel. When was the last time you ever remember, Doctor, this many candidates running for this many open seats?
It's been decades, so I don't remember. It's been a long time, and we have 6 good people running for 3 spots, and I think a lot of because there were 3 open seats, that's what motivated people to run, because they really weren't running against anyone. So it's a small town, so it's very friendly.
How long have you been a resident of Sanibel?
I moved here 13 years ago, so in 2008, and at that time, my oldest son was 6, and we have 3 kids. And so we had 3 little kids, and now he's 19 and in college. So a lot's changed.
Go ahead.
So first off, how's the campaign going?
It's going well. The whole concept of campaigning is completely alien to me and probably to most of the others in the race. So it's a lot of just emailing your friends, texting your friends, because it's such a small town that you're reaching out directly to people. That's the most effective thing that you can do.
So I was looking back at something in we'll deal with the COVID thing, because that seems to be one of the biggest things that's facing every area, but certainly Sanibel. I know that you said that continuing the mask policy for indoor spaces through most of 2021 and beyond if needed. You know, things change so quickly with this. Is that still your feeling?
Yeah, I think, Sanibel, the average age is 67 years old. So it's a very different community than the rest of Lee County or pretty much anywhere in the United States. I think the job of an elected official in part is to reflect what the population wants. And the population here simply wants as many precautions as possible. At least 90% of them do. You know, is there a minority who feel that it's too much? And yes, there is a minority, but they're a really small minority. Most people here are very cautious, and the more we can make the local senior residents of Sanibel feel comfortable, actually the better the economy will do on the island. If you talk to a shopkeeper on Sanibel, their best customer is a local person who's 70 years old or 80 years old who comes in to buy products, clothing, toys for their grandchildren, whatever. It's a different kind of community. And if those people feel comfortable going into a store, the stores are going to do better. It's just that simple. The day trippers tend not to spend as much money as the people who live here for 6 months or more out of the year. And you can talk to local shopkeepers and they'll tell you that.
Just one more. You sort of alluded to the answer to this, which is that Sanibel seems to have really good compliance with the mask mandate, way more than other municipalities. So what do you attribute that to?
I think it's age. People are just older. I think they also, because they're older, they know people who have gotten seriously sick, hospitalized, died from COVID. If you're 30 years old, you don't know anybody who's been hospitalized or died from COVID because all your friends are 30. And yes, if you're 30, you basically have very, very little to worry about. I mean, you read in the press about a 30-year-old getting COVID and dying or serious, like long hauler COVID. That's rare. That's very rare. On the other hand, if an 80-year-old gets COVID, there's a strong risk of being hospitalized or dying from it. And these people know people who that's happened to. I mean, personally, I take care of elderly people every single day. I mean, I'm a dermatologist, but by default, I'm a geriatric dermatologist because I'm in Southwest Florida. And therefore, I've had patients who've died from COVID. And these are people, I saw them in October and they walked in the office, they walked out, they drove themselves to the appointment. They know what day it is. They know what time it is. They're playing golf. And 2 months later, their wife sends me a card and says, so-and-so died. So these are not nursing home patients on oxygen, but they are old. And that's what they have in common. I mean, there are plenty of vivacious 75, 80-year-olds in Southwest Florida who are at risk of dying from COVID, and they don't want to. They want to live as long as they possibly can. So, and COVID took them too soon. These are people who are retired in a fashion that all of us wish we could retire in that they're healthy, relatively speaking, and walking and talking. Yes, 25 or so % of COVID deaths are in nursing homes, but the other 75% are generally older people who are having a great retirement and having a good time in Southwest Florida and dining in restaurants and shopping and doing all the things that retired people do here and playing golf and fishing and having a pretty good retirement life.
So, Doc, this part of this political side of it has become a battle between governors, Cuomo and DeSantis, and who's done better and who's put people in nursing homes and killed them. I mean, I'm not saying that's what happened, but you hear it in the press all the time, and we probably won't know what the real truth is for years and years. But would you have preferred, or do you prefer more of a lockdown as far as restaurants and gyms and hairdressers right now compared to the way DeSantis has done things?
I would say no. I don't think that lockdowns are necessarily the way to go. I mean, if you compare Florida to California, there was an interesting item in the news yesterday just comparing the stats. And California has been much more restrictive. And in hindsight, the data doesn't really support what they did. Now, they are different populations. You could look and say there's a lot more poor people in Southern California who are immigrants from Mexico and Central America who are living in dense, dense housing, much more dense than Florida. But still, I mean, I think, it's very. I don't think the lockdowns necessarily are the way to go. I think wearing a mask indoors is definitely the way to go. So we don't have to have lockdowns. I think we're very lucky in Florida in that we have weather where we can be outside all the time if we want to. I think crowded bars and restaurants with no masks, that's a problem. And only in hindsight, as you say, will we know exactly if there were super spreader events. Nobody wants to get back to normal life more than I do. And look, I have traveled extensively in the past year. I mean, I've been to Maine to visit. I've been to Virginia, been to Colorado. I just got back from Colorado again. I've been to Colorado 3 times in the past year. So, I'm not afraid of things. But on the other hand, on the airplane, I'm wearing an N95 mask and I have my, eyeglasses on and I'm washing, wiping down the surfaces and being, careful. And it's interesting that on airplanes, we don't have a lot of documented COVID transmission. There's really good air circulation on airplanes and everybody's wearing a mask. So I think that, if one thing argues in favor of wearing a mask is the fact that airplanes are really probably pretty safe. I mean, we don't really know. I haven't read any accounts of anybody where we can prove that they got COVID on an airplane once everybody was required to wear a mask.
Right. So, A being the best grade, F being the worst grade, how would you rank how the job the town council, the city council is doing right now? Overall, not just right now, but the last few years that you've been watching.
I'd say an A. I mean, they've done a really good job. I think they are fiscally responsible. They don't spend money that they don't have. And I think that's really important. We all need to live within our means and nobody wants to pay more taxes. I certainly don't. And so, I think they've done a really good job. We have some difficulties because of COVID, like our recreation center, the dues collection is way down. Membership has dropped off, partly because the older people have dropped their memberships because they don't feel comfortable. If they felt comfortable, they would go more. And so we need to work on things to make everyone feel comfortable to go and pay their dues to the rec center, for example. We did in April and May, nobody really knew nationally what the right thing to do was. But if you saw the causeway, there were huge wire fences erected on the causeway. The beaches were closed. Everything was closed. I'm not sure. And, at the time, it seemed like the right thing to do. But on Sanibel, the beach parking was closed. So therefore, a significant revenue loss there. Maybe that was a mistake, but I don't think anybody at that time, we had a horror show in New York City with people, literally dying out, in their apartments, not even being able to get into a hospital, people being found dead. So nobody really knew exactly what the right thing to do was. But in hindsight, closing the beaches and closing beach parking was probably not necessary and probably it cost the city money. And we do know that outdoor activity is perfectly fine. I mean, you're very, very unlikely to get COVID on a beach. Now if the beach gets super crowded, that's different, but there's only so many parking spaces on Sanibel, so the beach doesn't get that crowded. It's not quite the same as Clearwater Beach or Fort Myers Beach as far as crowding.
Exactly. So what adjustments might need to be made due to the decline in revenue as a result of COVID-19 for the next council to consider?
Oh, that's really a good question. Council has committed to building a new senior center. It's called the Center for Life. That's the name of it on Sanibel. And that may have to be deferred a year or two. The city has already purchased the building. And that's going to be, then, it has to be renovated. It's an old bank building that has to be renovated for for that purpose. But I think that may have to be deferred, a year or so in order to make sure that we have a balanced budget. There are always other budget priorities that have to be deferred, or that may be deferred as well. That's probably one of the bigger ones. The good news is that the city has made some smart decisions as far as financing the big sewer expansion. They were able to borrow money, I think around 2.3% for 15 years to finance this very expensive but very necessary sewer expansion project. And when you can borrow money that cheap, borrowing money is not always a terrible idea when it's the terms are that good. So we just need to keep that in mind as well.
So, what is your number one priority if you get elected to the city council? What would you like to work on first, and say something hasn't been addressed, or I really need to charge forward on this one?
Well, I mean, there are two things really. One is water quality, which we can talk about, and I'm sure all the other candidates have talked about that as well. We need to use our clout and also the clout of the Fort Myers Beach Town Council, every single city and town council up and down this coast, to make sure that Tallahassee understands that sending polluted water down the Caloosahatchee River is severely detrimental to the Florida economy. For example, I was traveling in Italy a couple years ago, and I met a French Swiss guy named Pierre, and we were talking, and I told him where I was from, and he said, "Oh, that's the place with all the water problems, red tide, right?" And he had never been to Sanibel ever, or Southwest Florida, but he knew of Sanibel because he had read it in some European news source about red tide and fish kills. This was the summer of 2018 when everything was really bad, when we had the horrible red tide. And, that kind of thing, people at the national and state government levels need to understand that Florida is a massive tourist economy. It's, one of the biggest in the world. And in order to preserve that, you have to have a good environment. The environment in Florida is the economy. The economy is not steel mills. It's not oil refineries. We're not Texas. We're not Michigan. It's a different kind of place. And so we need to understand that the environment is the most important thing, and it makes economic sense to preserve. And I think Governor DeSantis absolutely gets that. I don't think Rick Scott got that, but I think DeSantis 100% understands that the environment is the economy. I may disagree with him on some issues, but as far as water quality and other things go, he's done great things for us in Southwest Florida, and I look forward to that continued success. Now, as far as a specific issue that has been addressed recently, but it needs to be readdressed, because literally as I'm sitting here on my back porch, I hear a leaf blower. It's a Sunday afternoon. I don't know where it is. It's probably a half a mile away, but I can hear it. And they're not necessary. When I was 10 years old, I lived in Virginia, and we had about an acre yard, and it had probably 50 trees. And I spent a lot of weekends with my dad raking, and with an old fashioned rake, and it worked just fine. Nobody had a leaf blower back then. And we also
Right.
now. So,
I know the noise ordinance or the noise pollution is an issue that you've talked about in the past. I just want to go back just a little bit to what you were talking about and ask you about the Southwest Florida Compact for Coastal Resiliency. Sorry, it's a mouthful. So can you talk a little bit about what that is and why it's important to be a member of that group?
Sure. That is an organization that's just in its infancy, and it's more to do with storm readiness and hurricane readiness and dealing with floods and high water than it is with the water quality, although we could certainly introduce that element to it, because they're part and parcel, and all the towns and cities within this organization have the same interest of having good water quality. Basically, right now, this is just starting, and it's towns like Sanibel, Marco Island, Naples, Fort Myers Beach, everybody getting together to essentially come up with plans to deal with sea level rise, storm surge, increased storminess, etc. And part of it is is dealing with fortification, so to speak, of the coast, although more like making sure the roads are high enough and we have access to get out in case of storms. For example, the Sanibel Causeway, the highest span, the one by the toll plaza, when you come over that, at times when there's a big south wind and some big waves and a high tide, that's flooded. And it happens pretty much every summer on a day or two. And you see how close we are to being cut off from the rest of the world. And so this organization helps to deal with that. Now, the bigger problem of global warming and sea level rise, that's a federal thing. That's not us. I mean, we can make small baby steps in that area, but that's really something federal with the Paris climate.
And Doc, this is the organization that Mike Savarese is organizing, correct? Okay. We interviewed him on February 4th. If anyone's interested in going back on our beachtalkradio.com page, not Beach Talk Radio News, but we interviewed him back on February 4th. And if anyone wants to listen to more detail about that organization and how he's trying to put together all of the communities like Sanibel and Fort Myers Beach and the others, there's no financial investment in that organization yet. And we addressed all that in the interview with him. So if anyone wants to listen to it, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I don't want to run out of time, but I did want to ask you about when one of your major issues is leaf blowers. I think you got a pretty good deal going on.
Well, I think basically what I did is I bought an electric leaf blower for my landscaper to come use because I just can't take it anymore. And I think that's a reasonable compromise. They don't work as well as the gas powered leaf blowers, but they do work. And the issue for the commercial guys is battery life because, it might be 30 minutes or at full blast that it lasts. It never lasts as long as the package says. But it lasts long enough to do my little quarter-acre yard, which is what most people have, and I think that is one approach that we could take. The council just went through all this. I had brought this topic up to Councilman Mon and to Councilman Goss a few years ago when they were on council and before Goss was reappointed in the interim seat.
Right.
And we brought them up separately, or I brought them up and they said, well, the best thing to do is talk to Cody, which is a Committee of the Islands, which is a long-term organization of concerned citizens about quality of life on Sanibel. So I brought it to Cody, a woman named Barbara Joy Cooley, and she had them present the idea of putting restrictions on gas-powered leaf blowers. It was debated heavily, and at that time, it was decided to at least limit the hours of operation, but not too much more beyond that. But I think that if I had my preference, I would prefer just to be rid of them.
Is it keeping people up at night? Is that what the problem is? Is it too loud? Is it? I can't imagine in our neighborhood that people would be complaining about leaf blowers. I'm not getting it.
Okay. Well, when the weather's great, like it is today,
yeah.
No on, all the windows are open. I'm sitting out on my back porch. I like to sit outside, and have windows open. And if you're trying to enjoy peace and quiet and just listen to the wind, right now, the leaf blower is off, so all I can hear is the wind rustling through the trees. It's pretty awesome. And
gotcha.
It's a matter of peace and quiet.
Gotcha.
And before people were starting prior to 8 a.m. So they put a restriction, said you can't start yard work with a leaf blower prior to 8 a.m.
I'm down with that for sure. I mean, or after 6 o'clock at night or something when I try and go to bed. When you're elderly, you go to bed early at night, I discovered. Did you want to ask something first?
Just getting back to water quality kind of on the island and the Sanibel Slough, how would you go about limiting the inputs or, improving what's going into the slough at this point?
That is a great question.
Good for you.
I think we need to look carefully and you work with SCCF to measure the inputs and know where they're coming from. The SCCF is the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation, and they have scientists who are on their staff full time who do nothing but studies. And we need to figure out if our golf course best practices recommendations are working, and we've come up with plans as far as limiting fertilizer and times of the year for the golf courses, which are significant contributors to fertilizer runoff into the Sanibel Slough. We also need to look at the areas farther west where we need to figure out whether the nutrients going into the river are these leftover nutrients from old septic tanks or old farm fields. You have to remember there were farm fields on Sanibel, 80 years ago. They were growing tomatoes and all kinds of things. Where are these nutrients coming from? And I think we really don't exactly have a full handle on that. And studying that and understanding where they're actually coming from is really important. We do have a few 19 septic tanks left over that were never converted to sewer, and we're getting close to getting some state dollars to pitch in with our local dollars to get those last ones removed. Representative Botana has done a really good job of helping us with that. And getting that in the budget, at least as it was of about 10 days ago when I last saw him and talked to him about it.
Great. So
I just want to say, I was looking on the, about the best management practices and the couple of the reports. And it does seem that there's 3 golf courses out there that at least that there was a report for, and they have made considerable gains. And I think 2 of them were in full compliance and 1 is in partial compliance. So what is going on out there, at least with those 3 golf courses, seems to really, they're leveling up and making positive changes towards the inputs and the fertilizer that they're, the runoff they're doing. So I did want to mention that.
And so but what we don't know is if the fertilizer they put down 10 years ago, is it still there?
That legacy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it washing off every summer more gradually? And so will the changes that they have enacted more recently, have a delayed beneficial effect, but not be seen for a few more years? And I don't know the answer to that.
Right.
So rapid fire a few with us, Doc. Were you in favor of the council really doubling or it might have been more than that, the fee for non-residents to come and park?
I can't answer that rapid fire because it went it went from 124 actually to 200. Okay, this year. So if you walk in there today, they'll charge you 200. Next year it'll be 300. Okay. So am I in favor of that? Yes, it hadn't gone up in a long, long time. And if you come once a week, it works out to $6 per trip, and you can stay on the beach all day for $6. That's still a pretty good deal.
When you go to the voting booth on March 2nd, who would you like to see sitting next to you that isn't there now? From the other candidates now on the ballot.
Oh, did the other people answer that question?
I'll tell you after you answer.
I think we have a great group of 6 people running, and win or lose, I'd be happy with any of those people.
That's exactly what they said. So you're safe.
All right. So here's one, serious, not serious. It is a serious situation though. You are a cyclist, correct?
That's right. Yeah. I ride a bike.
And I'm sure that you wear a helmet.
Yes, I
correct.
do. Yeah.
So we've been over on Sanibel, and Ed's always noticing that a lot of people that are renting bikes do not wear helmets. Is that something you would like to see, maybe a mandate for that?
I don't think so. Although I do think the Sanibel Bike Club years ago produced a video on bike safety, and my son, who's 19 now, when he was about 12, he was one of the people in the video, so I remember it well. That might be something to require people, if you're going to rent a bike, watch this video so you understand to yell out passing on your left, that kind of thing. Don't stop in the middle of the path. If you're going to stop, pull off onto the grass and do whatever. You're going to take your picture or drink your drink or wait for your friends. Things like that, are bike safety measures. Now, helmets are required for kids. And I have seen, last summer, I saw a family riding on the bike path on Sandcap Road with maybe a 3-year-old and one of those little plastic buckets on the back. And I stopped and said, look, guys, it's a law. You have to do this. It probably wasn't a rental bike, but that's not good. I mean,
No.
That's a child's life in danger. I have wiped out heavily on my bike on Sanibel. So I broke my shoulder in 5 places, and it was complete stupidity that did it. First of all, it was not, I was just dumb. But I had a helmet on, so I didn't have a head injury and no other problems. So, wearing a helmet makes sense. Now, I also have to say that, in my medical training, I worked in the hospital and worked in the ICU, and older people, when they got a head injury, they did not do well. And so if you were going to do anything, I would recommend anyone over 60 riding a bike wear a helmet. I don't know. I'm not sure whether you make that a law or you have them sign something when they rent the bike that says, it's been recommended and I decline. But anyway, those are, I think that
I am not in favor of new regulations or laws about anything, but we bike too. Well, she doesn't bike anymore because of a crash.
If I had not had the helmet on,
the
the head injury that I got would have been fatal. There's no doubt about the fact that I would have lost my life in that accident.
I think that's one no-brainer law that everybody should be required. You can't get on a bike without a helmet, but we've all fallen. If you get on a bike enough times, the odds are you're going to fall or hit something, or you could hit a pebble if you're going fast enough and crash. So
anyway,
and we a lot of bikers on Sanibel. Obviously, that's a way to get around town faster than a car, and the majority of people do not wear helmets. Now, they're going slow too, but it doesn't take a fast speed to fall and get hurt. You just need to fall the wrong way. All right. I'm not running for election, so I'm sorry about that. So, Doc, how can people find you, get in touch with you? I know time is running out, and the mail-in ballots, I think, are due soon, like tomorrow. But lay it out there how people can reach you.
Craterforcouncil.com. Craterforcouncil.com. That's pretty straightforward. My good buddy John helped design a website for me, which was really nice. So it's got pretty much the basics of my platform on there. Also on Facebook, just my personal Facebook page under Scott Crater. You can see more information too.
Is there anything else you want to get out to the people in terms of your unique qualities or what sets you apart from others?
Yeah, I think there are 2 people running in this race who really have an extensive scientific background, and it just happens to come in handy right now. And that's one of the reasons why I ran, because these issues were both with COVID and with water quality are the top 2 issues. John Henshaw is also a scientist, and I think knowing the difference between bacteria and viruses, and knowing the difference between a photosynthetic bacteria and a non-photosynthetic bacteria, these are things that the voters themselves need not study necessarily, but elect people that actually know about these things and care and are interested in it. I'm a science nerd. What can I say? And the science right now is really important. It shouldn't be, none of this stuff should be partisan. I mean, the Sanibel City Council race is nonpartisan. So the national issues and tensions we have nationally really don't have much play here. It's really about what's good for the people of Sanibel and what their interests are and representing them to the best that we can.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And we didn't get to everything, but we do appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Doc. Good luck in the race. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Enjoy the great day today.
And it's quiet. Yeah. Keep it quiet over there.
That's right. All right. Dr. Scott Crater and his interview will be posted to our website. If you go to beachtalkradionews.com after a few hours today, all the interviews are loaded up there in audio and video form, so you can listen to all of them. And, if you're having an issue on Sanibel making a decision. Except for Mike Miller, he declined
Right.
to be part of our little show here. So before we get to our next guest, Claire Beckman and Joyce Mathis, you're gonna.
I'll do this
Go ahead.
while you take a break. So I'm going to talk. Well, we told you about the dogs. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm going to talk to you about Sanibel carts. These are street legal electric vehicles, so you can get them. You can ride them on the road. They're all good. They cruise you can cruise the island in style. They come with 4 seats or a 6-seater. They are electric, solar powered, and or gas powered. Now, when you make your reservation, they have a bunch of different, 1 day, 5 days, 7 days, whatever. Get on there, take a look. But they bring it to you and it's ready to go. So all you have to do is hop in it and start cruising around. And then they will obviously come and pick it up when you're done. So reach out to them at 239-500-CART or Sanibel-carts.com. We've had them on the show before. They're lovely people, not only in Sanibel, but also in Fort Myers Beach. So any place that they can rent those, they will bring them to you. So call them for their daily rates. Now, of course, he's taking forever on his break. So I will talk to you about Island IT Pros, where all of your technology needs for your home or business. They specialize in internet, Wi-Fi, and business telephone solutions. Other services include website development, smart home, tech support, and point of sale, local customer service in Sanibel, Fort Myers Beach, Fort Myers, Cape Coral, and Bonita.
And right now, we're welcoming to the show Claire Beckman on the top box, and Joyce is in the bottom box, and they are from the Sanibel Shell Club, not to be confused with the Sanibel Shell Museum or Sanibel Shell Road or Sanibel Shell House, or there's so many shell things going on there.
Is it Sanibel Captiva Shell Club?
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Claire,
Perfect.
tell us about the club first. What's the Sanibel Shell Club about?
The Sanibel Shell Club was created in 1961 primarily to host the Sanibel Shell Show, which is now in its 84th year. But the mission of the club is primarily educational. So we put on the Shell Show, which is a judged event inside the community house, usually, not this year. And the proceeds from that, the net proceeds, are used for grants for people who are studying mollusks, which known to most people as shells, but mollusks are the animal, the shell, the complete package. So people who are studying mollusks, people who are studying healthy oceans. We donated about $30,000 last year to University of Florida, University of South Florida, FGCU's Water School, SCCF, Bailey Matthews National Shell Museum. So we have a number of grants that we make because education is our primary mission, and we meet monthly during season on the island.
So can you explain to Ed the difference between conchology and malacology?
Malacology, I'll let Joyce take
What
that.
that is.
Okay.
You're here to explain it to me like you know what it is.
I looked it up.
Okay, so conchology is the study of shells, and malacology is a study of the whole animal, and the shell is part of that animal. So when you're out on the beach collecting seashells, you're really collecting dead animal body parts.
Oh, how gross.
They're houses, like they're housing,
Right.
right?
Yes. But unlike
It looks like
houses,
you got a bunch of dead animals behind you there, showing them
That's
off in your case there.
so unlike us who we move from house to house over periods of time, those guys are in the same house their whole life.
It just
So-
keeps growing and growing. It's like if you started gaining weight and your house just gets bigger, that's kind of what's happening with the shells.
So a couple of samples. So this is a little young Florida horse conch, which is a Florida state shell. And he will grow to be, as big as this and bigger.
Holy moly.
So the largest one, I believe, is 24 inches. Is that correct, Claire, in the museum? So this is, and this is the Florida State shell. And I am not good at getting this in the center of the camera.
Oh,
There we
Yeah,
go.
you're
Great.
doing
Looks
fine.
great, yeah.
Yeah.
So can you flip that shell over a little bit and show? Yeah.
Okay.
So how does the color work inside the
It's
shell?
genetics. It's genetics.
Okay.
In some mollusks, it can what they're eating can change their color, they say, but primarily it's genetics. And so that they grow by, there's an organ that's like a skin. It's called a mantle. And this is too big to really show. Let me grab a smaller one. So this is the lightning whelk. So the animals in here, he has this skin that goes over the edge of it's like a fold of skin. And that is continually laying new shell material over this open edge of the shell.
So the shell's only growing just along that edge.
Along this edge. Right.
And then it just
And
keeps scrolling.
Yeah, and as the body gets bigger, because he's eating, he's getting bigger. Well, then the opening gets bigger and bigger.
Yep.
So do you guys ever walk around your house and say, we got too many damn shells around the house? What are we going to do with all these shells?
Never.
Well, my thing would be keeping them dust free. So it looks like
We don't talk about that.
We are not dust free ever. Never. But no one who collects anything, whether it's shells or skulls or beach glass, no one who collects has ever said, I have too many of fill in the blank, ever. Doesn't.
How many skulls do you have at your house, Claire? Is that, never mind.
A lot, probably maybe 20 or 30. I don't know.
Oh, wow. So
We're supposed to be talking about the shells.
That's
that's
right.
right.
I just wanted to. So if people who are not conchologists are out shelling, they should not take. They should only take shells that are unoccupied.
Right. Yeah.
And the easiest
Throw
thing,
the rest back.
the easiest thing is to smell it. And if it doesn't stink, put it back.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that I researched when we were trying to get ready to do a show on Sanibel was how unique the island is in relation to shells. The way the island is facing a certain way, which makes it a really big deal for shells compared to maybe other beaches. Can you talk about that?
Sure. I don't know, Joyce, you want to? Or you want me
Yeah. So it's like a backwards J.
That was a good.
And if you look at the other barrier islands, they're more parallel with
Right.
the coastline, and with the direction of the currents, it just brings it up. The shells just come up on shore easier. And the other thing is, if we have a northwest wind like we've had this last month, that the northwest winds blow over the surface of the island and it pushes the surface waters out. It sets up an undertow, and that undertow is what brings the shells in.
Cool.
So when it's the good news, when there's a northwest wind, the shells come in. The bad news, it's 57 degrees. And so
The good news, the really good news is it really doesn't last that long.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you guys have this event at the community house, when you have it live, the people going there, are they looking at shells? Obviously, they're looking at shells. Are they buying shells? Or and for their collection, like Joyce has behind her there, and that very fine looking setup there. She's got lights in there and the whole thing. It's very special back there, and she fits right in between them too. Like she set it up to do a
like,
show.
who would guess, huh?
So there's a couple things, but the shell this year, because of COVID, the Sanibel Shell Club is having a virtual shell festival March 5th and 6th from noon to 3 on our club YouTube channel. So this year, you'll be watching essentially 2 3-hour movies with door prizes. We have photo contest with over 300 entries from 15 countries. You'll be helping to vote. It's all from your computer like we're doing today. But last year and next year, and Joyce chaired the show last year, and we'll chair it again next year with Mary Burton. But you come to the festival, you line up outside, and as you're coming in, the outside is shell crafters selling things. There's T-shirts for sale. You come in, and the inside is more the Shell Club bailiwick, and the outside proceeds benefit the community house. Inside supports the club grants. And yes, you buy books, T-shirts, jewelry, shells, but the big draw, the reason people come from all over the world, literally,
is because it's a judged competitive show. One room is artistic, one room is scientific, and there's many categories in there for people to enter. And some of the professional artists who come bring works that cost upward for one Valentine of more than $20,000.
Wow.
So it's cool stuff to see. I'll let Joyce add on what she wants to here.
Yeah, and so last year we had 180 exhibitors that came from 60 cities in 24 states and 4 countries.
Wow.
And the exhibits are phenomenal. The scientific, when we talk about the scientific exhibits, basically those are shells that are part of a person's shell collection, and you can enter a single shell. For instance, it's a single shell you picked up yourself strictly on Sanibel, or it can be a single shell you picked up somewhere in Florida or the Caribbean, or it could be a single shell you picked up worldwide. So there's different categories for each one. And then we have multiple shell exhibits that range up to 40 feet in length. We have every year we have at least 2 or 3 that are 40 feet long. And so it's a competition to see not only which is the prettiest shells or more the rarest shells, but how they're displayed.
So
What are some of the rare shells? What are some of the most valuable shells, let's say?
Well, if you're on Sanibel and you're shell collecting, this is the one you want to look for. This is the Junonia. Whoop, where'd it go? There it is. So this is one that it's a deep water shell, so it doesn't roll up on shore, very often.
And you'll never find it. For example, people will say, oh, I'm so worried about finding a live Junonia. You will not find a live Junonia. They live way offshore, super deep.
Mm-hmm.
But that makes them special. Scotch bonnets aren't that easy to find on Sanibel. Lion's paws are a little easier to find towards Blind Pass, but you'll rarely find one on the east end of Sanibel. But are they extremely valuable? Only if you're walking the beaches and you're a collector. You can buy a Junonia for probably around $100, but and there are way more expensive shells in the world. People often don't realize that there are specific shells to specific locales. Even the shells you find in Miami are different from the ones in Sanibel. The shells you find in the Philippines or Vietnam or anywhere in Asia are very different than you find in Alaska. So there's all sorts of determinants. So at any rate, the ones here are not phenomenally valuable from a monetary perspective as some of the others would be.
So when you have the Sanibel Shell Show, Claire, say that 5 times.
Yeah, I know,
fast
right?
Without curse word. Did you say you had people that are judged on shells they collect and judge on shells that they are making?
There's 2 sides to the shell show in the community house. One room is artistic. So it's categories like single shell flower, and that's a flower made out of a shell. Sailor's Valentines. There are shell mirrors. There's shell display. There's shell jewelry. There's a multitude of categories. And within the artistic category, there's amateur, which means you've never sold anything, and professional, which means you do sell things. And each of those categories is judged by 2 judges in artistic, 2 judges in scientific. Joyce, do you want to talk more about the scientific side?
Yeah. So the scientific side, and what you were saying is rarity rules. And so if you have 2 shells that are equally rare, then you would go on the quality of the shell, which is in the best shape, which doesn't have any breaks or anything. And the educational part of it comes into 2, because these displays all have backboards that explain the shell. And so the education value comes into play and in the scientific side. And they're judged on the quality and how they're displayed and education value.
And I'm glad you're asking this question, because 3 of the videos in the virtual Sanibel Shell Show, one is about the history of the show, because we have some great footage going back to when it started on the porch of the Island Inn over 80 years ago. So we have a history of the show. We have recollections from people on the island. Meade Johnson talks a little bit about it. Deb Gleason and some others talk about what it was like to go when they were kids. And then we have a really excellent video that's an overview of what to expect at a normal Sanibel shell show. So 3 of our well over 35 videos have to do with telling you what this is.
So they're all shells that you find. Everything that so there are some shells that are made.
Okay, no, they're all been live. They're all body parts, but you can collect them yourself or you can buy them. And then here comes another aspect of the scientific area, because you are competing amongst each other for self-collected shells, which are one category, or worldwide, which means you could have any source, I should say. They can be any source, which means you can buy them, you can find them, you can trade for them, or they've been given to you as a gift. But if you're entering a class that sells self-collected, that means you picked it up off the beach yourself or found it.
So, okay, so there's no possibility of cheaters in this whole thing, right? I mean,
well, there has been.
Huh?
There are counterfeit shells.
What a bunch of losers, Joyce. I mean, why would you cheat at a shell show?
Well, I don't know that you would cheat, but the people that were making these shells were getting good money. And it's been a long time, because I remember when this is my 27th year. My husband and I retired in 93. And we traveled from Salem, Oregon, 18 years and stayed in Periwinkle Park.
Wow.
And a friend's grandson calculated that we have circumnavigated the globe 5.5 times. So that's a lot of diesel.
Dang,
but anyway, when we first started collecting shells, there's a shell called the golden cowrie. And they were actually being made by artificial means. I don't know how. And so you had to be careful when you bought them. I don't think that's the case any longer. But if you go back in history, shell collecting got really popular in the 1700s, and it was called the hobby of kings because it was for the wealthy. And they would actually send out excursions to islands to collect these shells. And there was a beautiful little shell called the precious Wintle trap, about that big, very ornate. And they were really well sought after. And I can't remember if it was the Japanese or the Chinese got wind of these crazy people paying big bucks, and they started making these out of rice paper. And they made these counterfeit shells and sold them. And now the irony is that what was a very expensive shell at one time, you can probably buy, I haven't bought one forever, but probably $30 or something to $50, depending on the quality. But there are only 2 fake ones left, and they're worth thousands and thousands of dollars.
Oh, wow. So you've been doing it for, you said, like 27 years, right, Joyce? Is that, or so anyone ever break out into a fight? Like, my shells are better than your shells? And no? Nothing like that?
You almost come to it. You restrain yourself, especially if it's a beautiful shell right in front of you. It happened to my husband. He saw a Junonia about 3 feet in front of him. And a woman came from around the side of him and ran in front of him and grabbed it. Now, that is not good shelling etiquette.
No, that does happen. On the beach, I've had plenty of encounters with people who were like, well, I was going to find that Junonia if you hadn't found it. I'm like, well, maybe you were, but I just found it. But in a shell show environment, yes, judging is somewhat subjective. So someone may disagree with what the judges choose for first, second, or third place. To my knowledge, blood has not been drawn, but on the beach, you
close to it.
on the beach, I could tell you stories of, oh yeah.
So do you need to like wear protective gear if you're out on the beach? To like pads and helmets required for shelling?
Stop asking a silly question like that. What is the answer though?
Not unless you intend to steal.
So you have shell security and the whole thing at the shell show. And where can I go find what the proper shell etiquette is, Claire? Is there a shell etiquette website? Oh my God, they're lighting up.
Yes. We have a wonderful video, which
of course you do.
Forever on our website, sanibelshellclub.com. Let me say that again, sanibelshellclub.com. After the show, all these videos will be there for you. And we have a wonderful video created by one of our members and her granddaughter and her daughter. And it's Windy the Wintle Trap. speaking to you about beach etiquette. So
And that's probably a shell, right? Wendy's a shell?
the whistle trap is a shell, and Wendy is her name in this video.
What is the rarest shell of all time? Like, is there a shell that if you saw it, you would be like, that thing?
You
needs to
would be
behind
knocking
glass?
somebody over to get it?
Well, the rarest shells, you probably would not knock somebody over to get them because they would be not found on a beach, found diving, and you might pull somebody's regulator off or something. But you wound down deep in the Indo-Pacific region picking up something. Here, it's the Junonia, a lion's paw, Scotch bonnet, a triton, a few things like that. But nothing here is that valuable. Joyce, do you have a thought?
No, I think you covered it. Yeah,
So when does the club meet? How can people join? Give us all the skinny on that.
Great. SanibelShellClub.com. Yes. Because we're just meeting virtually now.
Yeah.
And
so generally we meet at the community house, but our programs are being Zoomed right now, which is wonderful because anybody anywhere can join. We have a member who lives in Switzerland who is now able to come to the meetings. After the meetings, they're posted on Zoom, so you can actually go to Zoom and see the programs, which have been wonderful. And to join, you just go to the website. We take PayPal. You can go right on there and click donate. If you want to give us money, you can click join, and we'll have links for the virtual show, which again is March 5th and 6th.
And do you meet once a month, once a week?
Once
a month.
October through April.
Right.
Okay.
You got to take a break every once in a while because too much shelling will drive anyone crazy, right? So you take a little break there.
If you're on Sanibel, you never take a break.
That's true. So I know the Kiwanis Club doesn't allow women on Sanibel. I'm guessing your club is men and women because you don't discriminate against women in any way.
We do. We don't discriminate against men, Ed. You will be glad to know. You are there. You are more than welcome. And Joyce, my husband, shells is reluctantly on occasion, but he's traveled to Tonga, the Philippines, etc., with me shelling. And Joyce's husband was an excellent sheller, really superb. So, yep, we got boys, we got girls, we got dogs, we got cats, you name it.
So tell us, before we let you go, give us another rundown on the event.
Thank you for asking. March 5th and 6th on the Sanibel Shell Club's YouTube channel. You will get there by going to sanibelshellclub.com and clicking on a link. It is March 5th and March 6th from 12 to 3 p.m., both days, completely different content either day. And then it will be on our website thereafter. And that's our usual festival weekends. So we're doing it as a placeholder. We thank our almost 60 sponsors who have contributed enough so that we'll be able to have a robust grant program next year, even without COVID happening. And we thank the videographers from all over. Each of our grantees has made a video. We have hours and hours of fantastic, all original footage that's going to be shown.
Will you guys be hosting it?
We
are there.
It'll be live. It's just like a 3-hour movie. We personally, Phil, she's our Cephalopod Ceremony.
I was just going to say that's a cephalopod.
No, it's
an octopus.
So I have the honor as chair of the show of welcoming folks and giving them housekeeping measures in my cephalopod attire.
Claire, you got to break out of your shell and
that was a good one.
And that is the weekend of our, like she said, the normal Shell Festival, and the SCA, the Sanibel Community Association, will be having their portion. What they usually have outside because of they can't get permits to have outside activities. What they usually have outside will be inside that same weekend.
Yep.
So who are you two going to vote for on March 2nd?
The best candidates.
Yeah. And
you're good.
I'm off island, so I don't qualify.
Oh, okay.
Who
would you vote for, Joyce?
Have no clue.
Well, we want to thank you guys for coming on. It's been a lot of fun, even with the hat. Claire, we appreciate you coming on. And wait, is the event free or is there an entry fee to the? Okay, so people get on.
Free. Thank you for asking.
The
It's going to be
virtual,
like 10,000 faces on the Zoom thing, right? Is that what it's
No,
going to be?
it's not Zoom, it's YouTube. So you will see
Oh,
no
that's right.
faces. You'll see just a wonderful video going.
Cool.
and you can
Right.
watch it on your TV or on your computer.
Cool. And you guys will let us know afterward how much money was raised in the whole thing so we can put that on our site. Cool.
We will.
All right. Well,
All right,
hopefully
thank you
there's no
so
leaf
much.
blowers in your backyard and you guys are enjoying the great day out there. It's a beautiful day and we appreciate your time.
Thank you
Okay,
so much
thanks
for
for
having
having
us. You guys are awesome.
right.
Appreciate
Take
it.
care.
Thank
Bye-bye, Claire. Bye-bye, Joyce. Have a nice one. Oh, they were so nice.
They were,
I didn't know
they
shells
were
could be so much fun.
You're so loud. They were just hilarious
yeah.
too.
Yeah,
The
they're
whole, like, I don't
great
know,
fun.
a brawl breaking out on the beach.
Yeah. Give me
Over
that shell.
shells,
That was
I
my
know.
shell, you shell thief, you.
That's right. And counterfeit shells. Who knew?
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, this is episode number 5 in the can of our Sunday Sanibel show, broadcasting live from the home studio. I kind of like this.
I do too.
You could just come out. And
Yeah.
she doesn't even have any
Here.
pants on or anything like that. I'm just kidding. She's got jeans on. I didn't mean that in any way. And then, yeah, she has jeans on. And then next Saturday, back to Fort Myers Beach for episode number 154. We started on the 18th of August, 2018. No, the 5th of August, 2018. Episode number 154 will be Jim Adderholt, town council member, and John Cassini from
the Calusa Water
he's the Calusa Water Keeper. And we're going to talk about water. Nothing like talking about water when you're on the beach.
It's a big subject.
All right, everybody, enjoy your football Sunday, and we will see you next weekend. Have a great day. Bye-bye.